Proverbs 18:21. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Those who love it will eat its fruit. Come, man who fears God, join King Solomon in his moment of rest and peace by the side of this river. Quiet your heart and mind before the Lord here in this place. This will be a precious time to edify your soul by learning from the wisdom of King Solomon about the power of our words, an approach you may have never seen before. You who desire to live as a wise man and a man who fears God will see that every word is a seed, and that the harvest of our speech reaches our work, our family, our reputation, and our soul. So breathe deeply to hear ancient counsel that still lives today. Before we go further, let me explain how our journey here will be. Throughout this video, we will have blocks of reading the scriptures from the books of Solomon, direct applications for work, purpose, and relationships. And we will have moments of prayer to align our hearts with the Lord. And I tell you, do not be surprised, for I will speak with you as if I were King Solomon himself. This is so that you may live an immersive experience of rest, biblical learning, and communion with God, so that the word may reach your daily life and shape your path as if truly King Solomon had become your counselor. Allow me then to pray for you as a king who loves justice and seeks direction for his people. Lord, guard our mouth and purify our heart. Deliver us from the haste that wounds and the pride that answers without listening. Align the words of the wise man with your will. May our tongue be an instrument of life, of peace, and of truth before you. Teach us to speak with meekness, to be silent with wisdom, and to choose the right time for each word. May our house and our work taste the fruit of a disciplined tongue. In the name of the Lord. Amen. Let us open the Bible in Proverbs chapter 18, beginning in verse 4 through 8, where I wrote, "The words that come out of the mouth are like deep waters, but the fountain of wisdom always overflows, like a stream that runs and gives life." And I warned, "It is not good to show partiality to the wicked and so deny justice to the righteous." And I continued saying, "The lips of the fool provoke strife. His mouth leads him to blows. The fool's own mouth is his ruin, and his lips are a snare for his soul. And also, the words of a whisperer and gossip seem like tasty morsels, but they go down into the inner parts and wound within." Our speech can be a fountain where it quenches thirst and guides, or it can be a wound where it inflames environments and corrodes from within. The man who fears God does not use the tongue as a blind blade. He surrenders it to the Lord and turns his voice into a stream that refreshes and heals. When justice is lost, the word is perverted. When justice is honored, the word becomes a wall that protects. This is how bridges are born for prosperity at work, trust and nourishment of love in the family, and the doors God opens before an upright name. In my book of Proverbs, chapter 18, verses 20 and 21, I wrote, "From the fruit of his mouth a man's stomach is satisfied. From the yield of his lips he is filled." And then I sealed the truth that we will explore in detail throughout this video. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love their word will eat its fruit. Here lies the spiritual and practical key. Every word sows something. Every conversation carries the weight of seed planting. The man who fears God loves his word, not because he speaks much, but because he honors what he says. He knows that each answer can open a path or dig a pit. Therefore he seeks life with his lips and avoids casting death upon himself and upon others. When the tongue is governed, the soul finds rest. When the tongue governs the man, life becomes full of thorns. If this journey of wisdom makes sense to you and to have me as your counselor daily to assist you in seeking prosperity, purpose, and balance according to the Word of God, then leave your like on this video and subscribe to this channel now. Not as one who simply collects another video, but as one who decides to walk as a man who fears God in practice. This way, you will continue to receive my moments of rest with counsel that builds, corrects the course when necessary, and strengthens what God is building in you. Discipline in speech in practice, content and form. Let us open the Bible in Proverbs chapter 12, starting at verse 13 and going through verse 22. I, Solomon, wrote these words. "The evil man is ensnared by the transgression of his lips, but the righteous escapes from trouble because of the truth he carries. From the fruit of his mouth, each one is satisfied with good, and the work of a man's hands will be rewarded. The way of the fool is right in his own eyes, but the wise man listens to counsel. The anger of the fool is known at once, but the prudent overlooks an insult. He who speaks truth declares justice, but a false witness creates deceit. And I go on declaring, there are words that wound like a sword, but the tongue of the wise is healing medicine. The truthful lip will stand forever, but the lying tongue lasts only a moment. And I conclude, the Lord delights in lips that speak truth, but he abhors the liar and deceiver. What I wanted to teach here is simple yet profound. The mouth of the wicked digs his own trap, but the righteous turns his tongue into a bridge of deliverance. See, man who fears God, when you get used to speaking without commitment to the truth, every word becomes a stone that closes doors before you. But when your speech is honorable, clear, and faithful, every word is a brick that raises credibility. In the workplace, this difference is visible. The professional who rushes to answer creates friction, but the one who checks the facts and measures the tone builds trust. The Lord delights in the one who governs his lips and opens paths for him to be respected by superiors, colleagues, and clients. The tongue of the righteous not only preserves reputation, but becomes medicine that heals wounds in environments already weary of conflict. Let us now open the Bible in Proverbs chapter 15 from verse 1 to verse 7. I wrote with clarity for every wise man who desires to govern his tongue. A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. The tongue of the wise makes knowledge appealing, but the mouth of fools pours out folly. The eyes of the Lord are in every place, watching the evil and the good. A soothing tongue is a tree of life, but perversity in it crushes the spirit. A fool despises his father's correction, but he who accepts reproof becomes prudent. In the house of the righteous there is great treasure, but in the income of the wicked there is trouble. The lips of the wise spread knowledge, but the heart of fools is not so. What I wanted to show is that it is not only content, but also tone that defines the direction of a conversation. The man who fears God perceives that the same truth can heal or wound, depending on how it is spoken. A correction given with meekness becomes an opportunity for growth, but the same truth, spoken in anger, opens cracks that are hard to repair. When the tongue becomes a tree of life, those around rest in its shade, but when it becomes a blade, all withdraw. In the workplace, this is even clearer. A gentle word persuades more than a shout. Her calm answer opens more doors than aggressive speech. God observes how each word is used, and he honors the one who chooses meekness over verbal violence. Now I invite you to turn a few pages and come with me to Ecclesiastes chapter 5 from verse 1 to verse 7. Here is the warning I wrote. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. To draw near to listen is better than to offer the sacrifice of fools, for they do not know that they are doing evil. Do not be rash with your mouth, nor let your heart be hasty to utter a word before God. For God is in heaven and you are on earth, therefore let your words be few. For a dream comes with much busyness, and the voice of a fool with many words. When you make a vow to God, do not delay in fulfilling it, for he takes no pleasure in fools. What you vow, pay it. It is better that you should not vow than that you should vow and not pay. Do not let your mouth lead your flesh into sin, and do not say before the angel that it was an error. Why should God be angry at your voice and destroy the work of your hands? For as in many dreams there is vanity, so also in many words, but you fear God. Here is the direct application. If before God haste in speech is dangerous, how much more before men? Promises made without caution come at a high cost. At work, a vague word in an email becomes a demand tomorrow. A promise not written down turns into confusion, and a statement made in the heat of an argument can destroy years of trust. The wise man understands that every commitment is a vow, and that fulfilling is better than promising in excess. If even angels are offended by human excuses, how much more those around us? Therefore govern your tongue. Speak less, fulfill more, and let your word be synonymous with integrity before God and before men. One of the costliest errors many commit, especially in the workplace, is confusing opinion with fact. See, man who fears God. When you mix personal perceptions with objective data, you create unstable ground. A simple, "I think it was this way," can become a charge tomorrow. But "I checked and it is confirmed" plants trust that opens doors. That is why the path of the wise man begins by placing facts before opinions. Not because opinions have no value, but because only facts sustain lasting decisions. If you want to build credibility, learn to distinguish between what you think and what you know. When this discipline takes root, your name becomes synonymous with trust. Another detail that ruins credibility is the use of absolutes. Saying, "You always delay," or "This never works," is an exaggeration that undermines your leadership. The wise man prefers precision over hyperbole. It is better to say, "Yesterday you were late," than "You always delay. It is better to say, "The last meeting was unproductive," than "These meetings never work." This verbal discipline not only avoids conflict, but inspires respect. The man who speaks with clarity is seen as just, while the one who exaggerates loses credibility even when he is right. That is why vague commitments are traps that time exposes. "I'll take care of that later" may be forgotten. Say, "I'll handle this without a date" can become an accusation. But when you define a deadline, a responsible party, and a delivery method, you protect yourself and those who trust you. The man who fears God honors what he speaks, records what he promises, and fulfills what he writes, and when he fails, he does not hide. He communicates early, asks for forgiveness, and preserves the bridge that another would have burned. Precision is more than professional discipline. It is testimony of integrity. Let me tell you a brief story. Walking through the gates of Jerusalem, I saw a merchant weighing grain before the crowd. It seemed like an ordinary scene, but when I observed, I noticed his scale was slightly tilted. 1 grain less in each measure seemed nothing. But at the end of the day, dozens of customers left cheated, and injustice grew without anyone realizing. But one day, it took only one customer to understand what was happening, and the news of his dishonesty spread through the city, and the merchant was shamed before all. What I wanted to teach with this is that the smallest twist in the measure corrupts the whole. So it is with the tongue of man. A misplaced comma in a contract, a number spoken without confirming, a deadline left undefined, and the entire agreement becomes confusion. If you understand what I say, measure your words as one adjusts a scale. Declare what it is, how much it is, and for when it is. This is the discipline that makes the wise man a reference of trust. Why is it that truth poorly spoken wounds? The same information that could heal and restore can be turned into a knife if thrown without care. The wise man does not settle for merely being right. He seeks to speak in such a way that his truth produces life and not destruction. If your voice is not disciplined, even what is correct can become offensive. It is like giving medicine in the wrong dose. What should have healed ends up making sick. The man who fears God must discern not only what to say, but how to say it, because tone is as important as content. There are simple practices that guard your tongue from wounding. One of them is the 10-second pause before responding in tense moments. This space protects the heart and prevents the mouth from running ahead of reason. Another practice is to write the response and read it quietly before sending. That reading reveals if the tone is too harsh, if the words are loaded with attack, or if they bring clarity. The wise man replaces attack with description. He prefers to say, "When you did not deliver the report, I felt overwhelmed. Can we adjust this together?" rather than releasing a "You are irresponsible." The first opens doors. The second closes hearts. Make your voice a scalpel, not a hammer. The scalpel cuts, but heals. The hammer breaks, but does not rebuild. The man who fears God understands that the impact of the word lies in the way it is delivered, and that it is better to be precise and gentle than loud and harsh. Tone discipline is what separates the man who builds trust from the one who creates fear. And if you want to prosper in any area, learn to turn your tongue into an instrument of restoration. Let us now open the book of Song of Songs, chapter 4, from verse 1 to verse 11. Here I describe the power of words that build. How beautiful you are, my beloved. How beautiful you are. Your eyes shine like doves behind your veil. Your lips drip honey like honeycombs. Milk and honey are under your tongue, and the fragrance of your garments is like the fragrance of Lebanon. These words show that the mouth can be a source of dignity, honor, and construction. I wanted to teach that the tongue is not only for warning, but also for ennobling. When you, wise man, give specific praise, you give identity. When you recognize with clarity, you strengthen virtues. The word that honors becomes shelter. Now I turn to what my father David wrote in the book of Psalms, chapter 141, from verse 3 to 5. He pleaded this way, "Set a guard, O Lord, over my mouth. Keep watch over the door of my lips. Do not let my heart incline to any evil, to participate in wicked deeds with men who do iniquity. Let the righteous strike me in rebuke. It is oil for my head. Let me not refuse it." See how deep is the verbal discipline of the man who fears God. It is not only about restraining the word, but about desiring correction from the righteous, about being open to rebuke that heals. The guarded mouth is the first wall of an upright life. And the righteous, when correcting, does not humiliate, but anoints. I will now go to the book of Exodus, chapter 23, from verses 1 to 3, and then from 6 to 8. Moses wrote, "You shall not spread false reports. You shall not join hands with a wicked man to be a malicious witness. You shall not follow the crowd in doing evil, nor shall you testify in a dispute so as to turn aside after the many to pervert justice. You shall not pervert the justice due to your poor in his lawsuit. And you shall take no bribe, for a bribe blinds the clear-sighted and subverts the words of the righteous." Here is a clear warning for every business meeting, every backstage conversation, every professional decision. A distorted word opens the way to injustice, and a rumor spread is like fire that devours the reputation of many. What my father David and Moses wanted to reinforce with me is that reputation is built by the thread of words, in emails, in negotiations, in meetings. The tongue can raise or destroy an entire life. An ironic comment in a group can corrode trust. An apparently harmless lie can ruin a name that took years to establish. The wise man does not play with the tongue. He treats it as a treasure to be guarded. And when he speaks with the clarity of one who knows that every phrase will be remembered, before God and before men. There are codes that make the voice of a man who fears God credible before all. The first is clarity, to speak what is without detours, without ambiguities. The second is strategic brevity. He does not waste words, but says what is needed with firmness. And the third is the written agreement. When you record what was agreed, the word gains the weight of a witness. These three codes, clarity, brevity, and record, build the credibility that protects and multiplies your influence. Whoever governs his lips this way becomes a reference in any environment. To test each word that leaves your mouth, apply the checklist I call TNR, that is true, necessary, and respectful. Ask yourself, is it true? Is it necessary? Is it respectful? If the answer is not yes to all three, silence is wiser. And when the subject is sensitive, discipline yourself with the 24-hour rule. Wait, pray, reflect, and only then respond. Because a word released too soon can wound, but a word spoken at the right time can save relationships. And if even then you fail, do not hide the mistake. Communicate quickly, ask for forgiveness, and preserve the bridges that silence or omission would burn. This is the verbal discipline that opens doors and multiplies honor. Clear signs reveal when the tongue has ceased to be governed and has begun to govern the man. The first is constant justification. I was just venting. But every misdirected outburst is like a spark in dry straw. The second is irony disguised as humor, a light sarcasm that wounds more than a shout. The third is the habit of passing on rumors, repeating what has not been confirmed, spreading fire without realizing. And the fourth is responding on impulse and before praying, before reflecting, before listening. All these signs show that the tongue is running loose and discipline has been abandoned. Therefore, turn your tongue into the guardian of treasure, the treasure of your name, your reputation, the doors God opens for you. The wise man understands it is not only about avoiding great sins, but about watching the small failures that create cracks. Every word can be a key or a knife, and the Lord watches to see if you are faithful, even in how you respond to a message or comment in a conversation. The undisciplined tongue ruins alliances, but the disciplined tongue protects inheritance and preserves the future. And whoever guards his mouth governs his destiny. Close your eyes with me for a moment. Breathe deeply and give this moment to the Lord. This is not just a video, it is a space for rest, learning biblical principles, and communion with God. I want you, man who fears God, to now pray silently. Ask the Lord to guard your mouth, purify your heart, and give you dominion over every word. Pray softly wherever you are, and present before God the area where you most need discipline in speech. If you prefer, you may pause this video briefly. While you pray, I also suggest that you share a prayer request in the comments. Write your name and the challenge you face, and then look for the request of another brother to intercede for. This way we are not only listeners of counsel, but a community of wise men who pray for one another. Your prayer strengthens someone else's faith, and his prayer strengthens yours. This is the treasure of communion, not walking alone, but in covenant before God. Time and destiny of speech. When to speak and where to speak. Let us open the Bible in Ecclesiastes chapter 3 from verse 1 to 11. I wrote as follows. To everything there is a determined season. There is a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather stones. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to sow. A time to be silent and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time of war and a time of peace. And I concluded, God has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. What I meant to teach is that it is not enough to have the truth. One must also have the right time to pronounce it. The wise man learns that to speak at the wrong moment is like planting seeds in winter. They will not sprout, they will not blossom, and may even rot the soil. There is a moment to be silent and a moment to declare, and wisdom lies in discerning the season. A confrontation made in haste produces defensiveness, but a conversation held at the opportune time brings transformation. If you, man who fears God, wish to see fruits in your words, you must learn to wait for the Lord's timing. Just as spring does not hurry, neither is the wise word cast before its time. Now let us go to Proverbs chapter 25, from verse 11 to 15. I wrote, Like apples of gold in settings of silver, so is a word fitly spoken in due season. Like an earring of gold and an ornament of fine gold, so is a wise reprover to a listening ear. Like the coolness of snow at harvest time, so is a faithful messenger to those who send him, for he refreshes the soul of his master. Like clouds and wind without rain, so is one who boasts of gifts never given. Through patience a ruler can be persuaded, and a gentle tongue can break a bone. See how precious this counsel is. The word spoken at the right time is a jewel. It is refreshment on a hot day. It is relief in times of fatigue. And the opposite is also true. The word spoken out of season is deception. It is emptiness, it is a promise without rain. The man who fears God understands that patience persuades more than imposition, that the gentle tongue conquers more than the raised voice, and that discipline in timing and tone multiplies authority, not because one shouts, but because one speaks when all are ready to listen. Now I will turn to Proverbs chapter 10, verses 18 to 21. I wrote, He who conceals hatred has lying lips, and he who spreads slander is a fool. When words are many, sin is not absent, but he who restrains his lips is wise. The tongue of the righteous is choice silver, but the heart of the wicked is of little value. The lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for lack of sense. Here I wanted to show that excessive talk is always an open door to stumbling. The tongue that is not restrained ends up sowing sin. But the disciplined tongue nourishes. The righteous tongue feeds many. And that is why the wise man does not measure value by quantity, but by quality. Every word must be chosen as refined silver, because on it depends the spiritual and emotional nourishment of those who listen to us. Abundance is not in speaking much, but in speaking with wisdom, at the right time, in the right tone, and in the right place. Many are lost, not because their content is wrong, but because they choose the wrong moment to speak. To be right at the wrong time still destroys bridges. The wise man understands that reason without timing is like seed cast into frozen soil. It does not germinate. Worse, it rots. That is why I teach that before responding in the heat of emotion, pray. Consult a faithful counselor. Wait for the opportunity, for the Lord has already appointed a time for each word. The man who speaks too early wastes his reason. But the man who fears God, who learns to wait for the moment, sees his arguments blossom like ripe fruit. A practice that protects the heart is what I call the calendar of difficult conversations. Set aside a specific moment to address the matter. Write down the facts, pray beforehand, prepare the soul, and then speak. Just as no one builds a palace without a blueprint, no one should enter confrontations without preparation. What I wanted to teach is that discipline in timing is not cowardice. It is wisdom, because confrontation made in haste creates resentment. But confrontation made at the right time creates reconciliation. There are truths that do not belong in the public square. There are matters that can only be dealt with in chambers, behind closed doors, because exposing someone in front of everyone is humiliation, not correction. The man who fears God understands that there is a place for each word, just as there is a proper place to plant each tree. In the digital environment, this is even more serious. Indirect remarks corrode, screenshots expose, ironies leave marks. That is why I teach that every message published must pass through the same test I have already mentioned. True, necessary, respectful. If it does not pass, then silence is the way of the wise. I myself have seen many lose their way not because they lied, but because they spoke in public what should have been handled in secret. A word misplaced in a hallway destroys more than a mistake inside the home, and a comment published without thought can become a stone thrown that never returns. The wise man knows that there are truths that only heal when spoken in the proper forum, in the right place, and at the right time. This discipline does not hide the truth, but protects it, so that it may be an instrument of life and not of destruction. I will now open the book of Song of Songs, chapter 5, from verse 2 to 8. There I wrote about the pain of a missed encounter and how the wrong timing can separate even those who love each other. I slept, but my heart was awake. Listen, my beloved is knocking. Open to me, my sister, my darling, my dove, my perfect one. For my head is drenched with dew, my hair with the dampness of the night. But when she hesitated, I had already withdrawn. I sought him, but did not find him. I called him, but he did not answer. The watchmen who made their rounds in the city found me. They beat me, they wounded me. Notice how a delay, a missed moment, can turn into pain. The wise man learns that even love can be wounded when timing breaks, and that waiting too long or speaking too soon can turn meetings into losses. I also want to bring a psalm from my father David. In Psalm 39, verses 1 to 3, he wrote, I said, I will watch my way so that I will not sin with my tongue. I will put a muzzle on my mouth while the wicked are before me. I was silent and still. I held my peace even from good, but my anguish increased. My heart grew hot within me. While I meditated, the fire burned. David understood that sometimes silence is necessary, but also that prolonged silence can become a burden within the heart. Therefore, discipline is not to remain silent always. It is to discern the moment. The man who fears God does not hide from speaking, but learns to be silent when it is prudent and to speak when it is life. Now let us go to Numbers chapter 30, from verse 1 to 8. Moses taught about the responsibility of words within the home. When a man makes a vow to the Lord, or swears an oath to bind himself by a pledge, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceeds out of his mouth. And he also showed how the vows made within the home brought responsibility upon the family. When a vow was made, it was up to the leader of the home to confirm or to annul. This shows that the word carries weight not only before God, but also in the family environment. The wise man understands that speaking at home requires as much reverence as speaking in the temple. Because every word spoken in covenant becomes a brick in the construction of life together. The thread that ties these counsels is simple and profound. The right timing saves alliances, prevents missed encounters, and multiplies fruits. In companies, a conversation held at the right moment can save partnerships. In the family, a careful word can restore years of wear and tear. Among friends, a prudent silence can preserve a valuable friendship. The man who fears God does not act on impulse. He measures the time and the forum. And when he opens his mouth, he knows he is not merely releasing sounds, but shaping destinies. There is a simple map that protects the wise man before every word. 4 questions that serve as a wall and a filter. The first, is it true? Because if it is not true, then it does not deserve to be said. The second, is it necessary? Because not everything that is true needs to be exposed at that moment. The third, is it respectful? Because even correction can be given with honor. And the fourth, is it the time and the place? Because a jewel given in the mud loses its shine. When all the answers are yes, the word can be spoken. But if any answer is no, then silence or postponement is the wiser path. The man who fears God lives by this map, and therefore does not lose himself in fruitless discussions. When you apply this model, you will notice that many words fade away before they even leave your mouth. And that is not a loss, it is a gain. Disciplined silence preserves alliances, protects friendships, strengthens marriages, and gives testimony in the professional environment, because the one who speaks only when necessary is heard with respect, while the one who speaks about everything is treated with disdain. The Lord honors those who weigh their words at the same level as he weighs gold, and the trust of men multiplies before the one who knows when to keep silent. I myself observed this and recorded it as a small parable. A certain craftsman was working clay with his own hands, and as he shaped a vessel, he applied gentle pressure. The vessel took form, but if he pressed at the wrong moment, the clay yielded and the vessel became deformed. So it is with the tongue. The same word that could build up can deform if spoken out of time. The wise man understands that parents, leaders, and friends have this power, to ruin or to perfect, depending on the time chosen to speak. It is not only what is said, it is when it is said. That is why verbal discipline is not a detail but a foundation of leadership. The man who fears God learns to wait for the right season and the proper environment. A counsel given at the exact moment multiplies fruit, but a rebuke given too early closes the heart. And if you desire to see peace in the home, prosperity at work, and honor in your relationships, begin applying this map of 4 questions. Always ask yourself, is it true? Is it necessary? Is it respectful? Is it the time and the place? This is the key that transforms the tongue into an instrument of life, in a word and in the home. Identity, promises, and reconciliation. Let us open the Bible in Ecclesiastes chapter 10, verses 12 through 20. There I wrote, "The words of a wise man's mouth are gracious, but the lips of a fool consume him. The beginning of the words of his mouth is foolishness, and the end of his talk is wicked madness. A fool multiplies words, though no man knows what is to be. Who can tell him what will be after him?" And I continued, "Woe to you, O land, when your king is a child and your princes feast in the morning. Blessed are you, O land, when your king is the son of nobles, and your princes eat at the proper time, for strength and not for drunkenness." And I concluded, "Through laziness the roof caves in, and because of idle hands the house leaks. Even in your thoughts do not curse the king, nor in your bedroom curse the rich. For a bird of the air may carry your voice, and a creature with wings may tell the matter. What I meant to teach here is that inner speech becomes destiny, murmuring in the mind becomes action in the hands, and dishonor whispered in secret may spread as if carried by wings. The wise man guards even what he thinks in silence, because he knows his mind is an altar before God, and what the heart repeats soon becomes practice. A house collapses not only because of idle hands, but also because of a careless tongue. The man who fears God disciplines even his thoughts, so that his words, his feelings, and his actions align with the Lord. Now let us go to Proverbs chapter 13, verses 1 through 6. I wrote, "A wise son heeds his father's instruction, but a scoffer does not listen to rebuke. From the fruit of his mouth a man eats what is good, but the soul of the treacherous feeds on violence. Whoever guards his mouth preserves his life, but he who opens wide his lips comes to ruin. The sluggard craves and gets nothing, but the desires of the diligent are fully satisfied. The righteous hates falsehood, but the wicked brings shame and disgrace. Righteousness guards him whose way is blameless, but sin overthrows the wicked." Here is the contrast I repeat often. Guarding the mouth preserves life, but opening lips without discipline ruins the path. The wise man knows that every word is a harvest, and that righteousness manifests first in the tongue before it shows in the hands. That is why verbal discipline is also spiritual discipline, for the mouth reveals what the heart carries. If the tongue is gentle, the heart is at peace. If the tongue is harsh, the heart is already heavy. The Lord honors those who align their mouths with justice and grants them abundant harvest. Let us now open the Song of Songs, chapter 7, verses 6 through 13. I wrote of the loving word that nurtures alliances. How fair and how pleasant you are, O love, with your delights. Your stature is like a palm tree, and your breasts like clusters. I said, I will climb the palm tree. I will take hold of its branches. May your breasts be like clusters of the vine, the fragrance of your breath like apples, and your mouth like the best wine, flowing smoothly for my beloved, gliding over lips and teeth. I am my beloved's, and his desire is for me. Come, my beloved, let us go out to the fields. Let us spend the night in the villages. Let us go early to the vineyards. Let us see if the vines have budded, if the blossoms have opened, and the pomegranates are in bloom. There I will give you my love. The mandrakes give off fragrance, and at our doors are all choice fruits, new and old, which I have stored up for you, my beloved. Notice, man who fears God, how loving words sustain the covenant. It is not only the body that unites, but the tongue that waters. When husband and wife learn to nurture with praise, with words of honor, with declarations of affection, the home becomes a fertile garden. But when the tongue is harsh, even the greatest love wears thin. Verbal discipline in the home is what waters the roots of the covenant. He who plants respect with his tongue reaps peace in the heart of the family, but he who prefers sarcasm reaps distance. The wise man turns his home into a vineyard of words that feed and refresh. The greatest lie many believe is, I am just like this, as if identity were a prison. But what I meant to teach is that disciplined inner speech can open paths. When you say to yourself, I am incapable, you build a wall. But when you say, I have not yet learned, you open a door. The wise man knows that the words he directs to his own heart define not only how he feels, but also what he does. So he replaces labels with processes. Instead of saying, I am a failure, he says, I am practicing. Instead of saying, I cannot, he says, I learned from the mistake, and I will try again. The tongue that governs the heart transforms the future. A powerful practice is the journal of replacing labels. Write daily the toxic sentences you have said to yourself, and beside them, rewrite with verbal discipline. Replace every sentence of defeat with a statement of process, and offer each line in prayer, asking the Lord to guard your mind and purify your heart. The man who fears God, who prays for mastery over his tongue, even in the silent speech of his mind, begins to see fruit. For the tongue directs the heart, and the heart guides the hands, and the entire cycle begins to produce life instead of exhaustion. In the home, verbal discipline becomes even more necessary. Specific praises build identity, but generic labels destroy. When a father says, "I noticed your effort in cleaning the house," he plants virtue. But when he says, "You are a disaster," he casts a prophecy upon his child. The wise man learns to correct without wounding, to use words that describe the fact, show the impact, and present the request. It is far more powerful to say, "When you arrived late without telling me, fact, I felt disrespected. Impact, could you let me know next time?" Request, than to accuse with vague words. Verbal discipline is not censorship, it is structured love. Sarcasm, even when disguised as joking, corrodes respect in the home. Repeated ironies become emotional cracks, but gentleness restores. When husband and wife learn to speak with clarity instead of hints, trust blossoms. When parents and children learn to express requests instead of accusations, the home finds rest. The man who fears, God knows every phrase can be cement that binds or acid that corrodes. So he chooses the words that bind. And when he errs, he asks forgiveness, because even an apology waters a wounded heart. The secret is not to avoid every failure, but to create an atmosphere where healing words outweigh harsh ones. And this begins within. Whoever disciplines his inner speech will be able to discipline his outer speech. Whoever learns to correct with gentleness builds homes that withstand storms. Verbal discipline is the invisible wall that protects love and preserves covenants. If you want to transform your house, start with your tongue. Make your routine a garden where each praise is a seed, each correction a careful pruning, and each declaration of love a daily watering. The wise man waters every day. The man who fears God knows that every word spoken at home does not die, but echoes for generations. And so he speaks with reverence, knowing that even his children's children will eat from the fruit of his tongue. There is a verse from my father David, Psalm 19 verses 7 through 14, that resounds with great strength in the heart of the wise man. He wrote, "The law of the Lord is perfect, reviving the soul. The statutes of the Lord are trustworthy, making wise the simple. The precepts of the Lord are right, giving joy to the heart. The commands of the Lord are radiant, giving light to the eyes. The fear of the Lord is pure, enduring forever. The decrees of the Lord are firm, and all of them are righteous. They are more precious than gold, than much pure gold. They are sweeter than honey from the comb." And he concluded, "May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight, Lord, my rock and my redeemer." Here lies the key. It is not enough to guard only what is spoken. It is necessary also to align thoughts, because God judges not only the tongue, but also the meditation of the heart. The man who fears God desires every word, every reflection, every silent prayer to harmonize with the Lord's truth. When this happens, speech becomes righteous, conscience becomes clear, and testimony becomes light before men. Now let us go to Deuteronomy, chapter 23, verses 21 through 23. Moses warned us, "When you make a vow to the Lord your God, do not delay in fulfilling it. For the Lord your God will surely require it of you, and you would be guilty of sin. But if you refrain from making a vow, you will not be guilty. Whatever your lips utter, you must be sure to do, because you made your vow freely to the Lord your God with your own mouth." Here, responsibility grows even heavier. If before God the unfulfilled word is sin, before men it is no different. The wise man knows that to promise and not fulfill wounds not only relationships, but also the heart before the Lord. Therefore, before saying yes, he must consider. And if he has no clarity, it is better to say no honestly than yes. That will rot into shame. Every commitment is an altar, and every word is testimony. Let me also read to you Proverbs chapter 31 verses 10 through 12 and then 26 through 28. There the virtuous woman is described. "A wife of noble character who can find? She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. Her children arise and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her." This principle applies to the whole household, not only to the virtuous woman, but to every member of the family who chooses to open the mouth with wisdom. The tongue that speaks kindness builds trust, sustains honor, and strengthens the home. The man who fears God knows prosperity in the house does not depend only on finances, but on words. Each phrase spoken in love becomes a brick that builds the family. Each broken promise becomes a crack that weakens the walls. Verbal discipline is the unseen foundation that holds up the home. And whoever guards his mouth waters peace in the house. A mark of maturity is learning to say, "I need time to evaluate," instead of answering on impulse. The wise man does not rush into promises he cannot fulfill. He aligns expectations, records deadlines, and assumes responsibility with clarity. Every record is a wall of protection against misunderstanding. Every promise kept is a stone placed on the road of trust. The man who fears God knows that honor is not in speaking quickly, but in speaking responsibly, even if it takes longer. But when failure happens, it is not silence that saves. It is confession. If you promised and did not fulfill, do not let time hide it. Time only widens the crack. Communicate early, ask forgiveness, admit the error. For forgiveness preserves bridges that omission would burn. The wise man knows that humility protects reputation more than the attempt to appear perfect. And the man who fears God does not fear admitting failure. For he knows God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. When this discipline takes root in the home, fruits multiply. 3 harvests appear: peace that calms, cooperation that strengthens, and honor that sustains. The house becomes a garden watered by disciplined words. Every praise is a seed of virtue. Every clear request is watering that strengthens. Every kept promise is fruit gathered. The wise man who governs his tongue turns his home into a refuge of rest. And the man who fears God experiences relational prosperity through verbal discipline. This is the final call of this section. Make your home a garden of words that water. Learn to say no when necessary, to say yes only when you can sustain it, and to water daily with words that heal and build. Never underestimate the power of a loving word spoken at the right time, nor the weight of a promise fulfilled with joy. The Lord honors those who make their tongue an instrument of life, and the home of those who guard their lips is filled with peace. Before we continue, I invite you to a brief pause of communion. Close your eyes and thank the Lord for the words already sown in your life that have produced fruits of peace. Now look at the comments, and if you find a prayer request, choose to intercede for one of them. Write your own as well if you wish, so that another may intercede for you. This is how a brotherhood of wise men and men who fear God is formed, not only listening to counsel, but watering one another in prayer. Together, we build a community that not only speaks, but prays and experiences the fruit of the disciplined tongue in unity, the tongue that sows life or death. Wise man. Man who fears God. Everything we have heard rests on a single principle I wrote in Proverbs 18:21. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Understand this with me. Every word you release is a seed. Every sentence you speak is a future harvest. There is no neutral word. It either builds or it tears down. Either it generates abundance or it plants scarcity. And that is why verbal discipline is not a detail. It is a path to abundant life. In daily practice, or what you learned in Proverbs, is that true content joined to a gentle form creates credibility. Doors open before those who speak with clarity and meekness in the larger purpose of life. As we saw in Ecclesiastes, a word spoken at the right time and in the right forum brings peace, gives direction, and yields a lasting harvest. And in our most intimate relationships, as in the Song of Songs, words of honor and love build strong covenants, homes at rest, families that prosper. Every area of life is governed by the same thread, the discipline of the tongue. And now I say to you, wise man and man who fears God, train your tongue. Pause before you answer. Verify the facts. Adjust the tone. Choose the right moment and the right place. And when it is needed, be silent. For even silence, when holy, is a word of wisdom. Each pause will be remembered as much as each phrase. Each decision to be silent will be a testimony as powerful as any firm speech. If you understand what I say, practice it, and share it. Write in the comments the area of your life in which you will apply verbal discipline this week. Work, family, relationships, purpose. Write, because by writing you make a commitment before God, and you also encourage other wise men and men who fear God to practice alongside you. This is the call to guard the tongue, love your word, and eat the fruit of life that it yields.